Hey everyone, this is Stephen Farag and Adam Cook from Campus Ink. Here to launch what we call the NIL Show. Have we named it yet, Adam?
I don't think we have, but that sounds pretty good to me.
Cool. So some of you have been following us, and Campus Ink has been a decorated apparel company in the collegiate space for quite some time. We recently got an investment from Mark Cuban. Adam Cook recently quit his full-time job to come join us in the NIL space, but we're going to be talking about all things NIL. That's name, image, and likeness. So let's just run it back. Adam Cook, who are you and what are you doing?
Yeah, I am overseeing all of our NIL efforts here at Campus Ink. So my official title, if you care about those sorts of things, is Director of Athlete Development and Partnerships. I am relatively new to Campus Ink officially, but have been very close to Campus Ink as a fan and a follower for a while. So my background is actually as a collegiate athlete. I grew up in the Chicagoland area. I played collegiate volleyball at California Baptist University in Riverside, California. Go Lancers. And after my playing career, I coached both the men's and the women's for a couple years. Did a little bit in strength and conditioning. And so along with my role at Campus Ink, I also teach in the Master of Sports Administration at Northwestern University. So really excited to be here doing this now in an official capacity with you and Campus Ink.
Sweet. So to give listeners a little background, Campus Ink is an apparel company. We are a screen printing, embroidery, decoration company in Central Illinois, right outside of the University of Illinois campus. I went to the University of Illinois. I graduated from there in 2014, started selling merch in college. One thing led to another, and we teach college students all across the country how to sell apparel. We manage the brands for several collegiate companies, whether it's in the fraternal sorority space and now in sports. Adam, what's our love story? Go for it.
Yeah. So when I first moved back to Chicago, Chicagoland area from California, the first job that I had was slinging software for this company you may or may not have heard of called Printavo. So I was an early hire at Printavo. Bruce took a chance on me in terms of just building out the sales and onboarding kind of team there, and knowing absolutely nothing about screen printing and apparel. He brought in his good friend, Stephen Farag, to teach me everything there is to know about the decorated apparel industry. And so I think one of the first things you and I did was hit the road for trade shows, selling software together, hanging out in hotel rooms, figuring out how to get people to understand what even software is in the decorated apparel space.
Yeah. And so what's actually pretty interesting is, we kind of both went our separate ways, became pretty good friends along the way. But Adam became a huge cheerleader of our business. When legislation passed and college athletes were allowed to make money on their name, image, and likeness, a college student texted me and said, "Hey, Steven, I want to sell to the basketball team." They just messaged me. And my first message was to Adam saying, "What the heck is going on? What are we doing?" So Adam, tell us a little bit about what name, image, and likeness is. It's kind of been a buzzword around collegiate space for a minute, but give listeners just an idea of what that is.
Yeah, we're 9-10 months into this new era of collegiate sports, and so if you know anything, if you're a fan at all about sports, you've heard name, image, and likeness. Name, image, and likeness is not new. This is something that the NCAA has had legislation and standards and practices around since their inception. The only thing that changed is July 1st, the legislation around it changed. And so it was Alston versus the NCAA. They brought an antitrust case against the NCAA, saying that they were, basically had a monopoly over controlling the name, image, and likeness of their collegiate athletes. Supreme Court ruled in favor of Alston, which then gave collegiate athletes the right to monetize, profit, benefit from the use of their NIL. Enter this, wild, wild west era that everybody's talking about as, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? This opens up the floodgates. And some of that has been challenging. Some of that has been awesome.
So just to backtrack, before July 1st, college athletes could not monetize or make money on their likeness. They couldn't sell apparel. They couldn't be in video games. Like you said, that name, image, and likeness has been around for some time. Can you kind of go into detail on what college athletes could do or couldn't do?
Yeah, I mean, essentially the long and short of it is they couldn't do anything. I remember as an athlete, and I was at a small school playing, a not very visible sport, and I remember there being, posters in our locker rooms, and without getting too graphic, like even in the bathrooms above this or on the stall doors of these like laundry lists of things that you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to, have your photo associated with any business, not allowed to run camps that are in your sport and charge for them. You basically couldn't leverage your position or your influence as a collegiate athlete and profit in any way off of that. The NCAA and the university essentially owned your name, image, and your likeness.
So you're telling me if I taught tennis in high school, I helped out at the local club, and then I went and played in college, I couldn't teach tennis over the summer?
And not charge for it. You could do it. You just would not be able to charge for it or make any money from your expertise, which, it's crazy when you think about the amount of athletes that go from the high school level to the collegiate level. It's a really small percentage. And so if you play a sport at the collegiate level, you are in no small way considered one of the top experts in your field. So you were completely hamstrung from being able to profit or monetize that expertise in any way, shape, or form.
And this is why, Adam, you could buy NCAA football at some point, right? And then NCAA football on Xbox, you couldn't buy anymore, right? Tell us about that.
So that was where, if you remember playing, I think this even happened in whatever that old
I had 05, NCAA 05.
Yeah, you could be your team. You could be University of Michigan. You could be SC, but it was always like tight end number 89 or QB number 7. It was never the actual player. And sure enough, their stats would be all the same, and it would kind of look the same way as that player maybe would look in real life. But they couldn't use the player's name because they weren't paying the player out for anything in terms of use of their name in that game. And so that's where all of this lawsuit came about. And the NCAA decided to say, ooh, maybe we should actually just not produce this game anymore because people are starting to realize we're making millions of dollars off of a video game of a bunch of 18 and 19-year-old kids.
So July 1st came around. We're an apparel decorating company that works primarily with college students. We get a text message from a couple college students saying, hey, we want to help these athletes out primarily at the University of Illinois. So I call Adam and I'm like, what do I do to make sure that these guys stay eligible? Remember that?
I remember you texted me and you were like, hey, what's this NIL stuff? And I was like, ooh, boy, here we go.
And these conversations then, they just turned into like threads and convos. And I mean, we were chatting about it for quite some time. We were running a brand at the University of Illinois called the Illini Store. A ton of e-commerce that we do. We have a retail license, so we're able to push that. And we started basically signing these players. And we were working with their parents. Sometimes we were working with agents.
You had like high school coaches reaching out to you too, right?
We had high school coaches. Like we had one news article come out about Brandon Pajemski and we're like, oh boy, okay, here we go. And I was still treading very lightly. Again, we were using the same formula of selling to fraternities and sororities, whether we were fundraising or teaching someone how to profit. The formula didn't change. But I didn't really think it was something we were going to like take to the moon by any means. I don't know, Adam, when did the combos start getting intense?
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember.
I think for the first thing that I remember you saying to me is like, hey, I don't even know if there's any opportunity here. And me saying, oh, there's 100% opportunity, but there's also a lot of liability. Because when you start to go into athletes and athletics, you start to get into this whole conversation around, official activities versus unofficial activities and, licensing and all of this kind of stuff. And so I think the big conversation was, okay, how do we make sure that if we're going to go about this, we're not the company that screws up somebody's eligibility. Like that's
Right.
that's a really easy way to get canceled.
The story was, we were talking to Kofi Coburn's, marketing agency, and we were talking about advances in royalty and figuring out how much he was going to make. And we had signed him, and then I got a phone call saying like, "Hey, Kofi's actually suspended for 3 games because he illegally sold his items on I think it was like a player's trunk or something like that."
Yeah,
and he did that while he was in the transfer portal, when he thought he was going to go to the draft. Right.
Yeah.
And literally our first major sign with Kofi, like he couldn't even play his first 3 games. So I was like freaking out, being like, what did we just do?
That's one of the crazy things too about this whole, shift in who owns this name, image, and likeness. That's a perfect example of, you've got a guy who's an NCAA eligible athlete under the old NIL legislation where he can't sell merchandise or whatever. He declares for the draft, which by definition no longer makes him an NCAA eligible athlete. While he's in the draft, he is selling merchandise completely legally. He decides not to go into the draft and so returns back to the school, which is a back door that the NCAA intentionally has left open. He's now back under the umbrella of being an NCAA eligible athlete and then retroactively gets in trouble for selling merchandise. I think it was his jersey, like one autographed jersey that he wore in the last game or something ridiculous like that. It's such it's confusing and like spider web of how do you want this to actually be applied? So yeah, it was interesting. We're like, oh geez, this first guy we got, he's sitting out for 3 games because of apparel, breach of apparel. But yeah, I think after that kind of got sorted out and we started to see more people jump on board and not only the athletes get really excited about it, but also to see the fan response. Like, oh, this is awesome. I can rep this guy's gear and, I can get something ahead of a game and have it with me in the stands and maybe get it signed or whatever. We started to see this snowball of momentum build where all of a sudden it was like, ooh, we might have something here.
Yeah, I think what was pretty cool is at first with NIL legislation, you really couldn't use the player's likeness with the university marks. And in some states that still is the case, depending on, there's federal and then there's like local and state law, right? And then there's university compliance, which we'll have to get into and dive into the different layers of all of it. But what was nice in Illinois is we could actually use the player's likeness in congruence with the university's likeness. And there's something called an NIL co-license that we'll have to get into. I think we dropped, Andre Curbelo's first drop and Kofi's first drop combined. I want to say we sold 700 or 800 shirts.
Yeah.
And we made these guys quick money. And I don't think we even realized what we were doing. Right. It just happened. And we're like, here you go.
Well, it's such a fascinating thing too, because everybody talks about how, you take the model of what happens in the pro leagues, like we're talking about basketball, Kofi and Bello, so what happens in the NBA, you take that same model and you bring it down to the collegiate level, but that's not really what's happening, because when you look at it from a fan perspective or even from the athlete perspective, their motivation for wanting to be involved in this is totally different than a professional athlete, right? Like if I'm a fan and I see that Bello's got some really cool t-shirt that he's dropping, I want to get that, not necessarily because I'm like, oh, I want a really cool U of I thing. I just love Bello and I want to support him and I want to rep his stuff, right?
So what you're saying, Adam, is like NIL can't really be compared to the NBA or professional sports.
No,
like two completely different. And I think the argument to be made there is when you go play professional sports, whether if you've got a rookie contract, you're still making bank. Right? You're still
100%.
making great money. When you are in college, no matter how many endorsements you get, unless you're Bryce Young, you're not getting that $1 million contract through your name, image, and likeness. This is just passive money that's going to help you out along the way and, maybe make an impact. But there is nothing that gets compared to pay to play.
And none of it's guaranteed. None of it has any of these other, professional employment things that are tied to it either. It's like you said, it's just kind of this extra thing on the side or on the top that kind of helps elevate your standard of living a little bit as a collegiate athlete. That's pretty much what it's doing.
When NIL just passed, I noticed like Cameo started like blowing up. Barstool Sports, they were signing athletes. And over time we were talking about it. We're like, how are these companies going to be able to support, all of these players? I guess, what's your opinion on how many athletes are actually going to make, I don't want to use the word real money, but let's just say it for a second, like money that's going to help their livelihood. We're not talking about a couple $100 here and there, but like money that's going to actually make them a living.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question that it's going to take a little bit of time to see how some of the dust settles or more of like the different layers that things fall down into, because somebody who may have a really cool opportunity through Cameo may not do really great selling t-shirts or jerseys or whatever, right? Like you kind of got to figure out where your niche is or your market is or your fans are or where your value is. You've got basketball and football players that have a lot more national attention around them. You've got volleyball players and softball players that have this incredible community within their sport where, the Cameo may work for somebody who's got a lot of national attention, but the merchandise may be a huge win for somebody who has this crazy, passionate niche following within their sport. So I think a big answer to that question is just taking a step back and looking objectively, where can I actually add value here to my fans or followers or community or whatever?
And that's kind of what we wrestled with in the fall. We took someone like Brandon Pajemski who hadn't stepped on the court yet and said, hey, maybe we could sell something to his high school. So we did his high school replica jersey to St. John's and donated money back. Or, whether it was Kofi and doing stuff or finding cool ways, like Jake Grandison to this day, one of the best like uses of NIL and merch releases, building up Slim Jake. So I think we were texting, and I think it started to get serious around the fall when the Illini store was really booming. Yeah. And we started talking about, how do we turn this into something legit? Walk me through, because I was the one sending the late night texts.
Yeah.
Talk to me about when you felt like this was actually something, or when you realized, oh crap, I might quit my job and do this with us.
So yeah, the background is during that time, my wife was like 8 months pregnant. So I'm with our first kid. So I'm like getting these text messages from you, having these conversations, one at like 11:30 or midnight. And Geneva's like, what the heck are you doing? I'm like, it's all good. Everything's fine. And two, like thinking about, okay, if we're going to do this, like, I got to also make sure that my 9-month pregnant wife is going to.
So pregnancy brain is actually a thing for dads.
100%. Absolutely. But I think as we got closer, it was like around Thanksgiving where you and I started to kind of sit down and actually build out some numbers and model what we'd already done at U of I. And like kind of run that in parallel with these other conversations that we were having. I remember I'd get a text message from you at like, 10:30 in the morning. You're like, dude, I'm getting more emails and text messages. I can't do it. Can you hop on a call later this afternoon? Hey, can you hop on a call this weekend? Oh gosh, my inbox is like blowing up with all this NIL stuff. So like it was modeling out those numbers in parallel with just seeing how many more people we couldn't keep up with. And I think that was where you started to suggest, hey, maybe we need to have a strategic partner involved in this.
Yeah. So along came Mark Cuban. The story is actually pretty lame. But, we started talking about ways that we could really, like, maybe we're going to raise money, turn this into a startup, and someone along the way said, hey, it would be good if you had a strategic partner like Mark Cuban. And I kind of laughed and was like, yeah, Mark Cuban, that would be great. Adam, did I bring up Mark Cuban to you before or after I emailed him? Did I just surprise you with that bomb?
No, we were talking about it before because I was on the call when it got suggested, and you're like, well, yeah, of course. Like, who wouldn't want him as a strategic investor? And then a couple days later, I just get a text message of a screenshot of the email that you sent to him. I was like, oh, so we're at that point. But the best part about that email, you wrote a great email, by the way. You could teach classes on cold pitches. It is unbelievable. I've seen it at trade shows. I've seen it with friends in what restaurant we're going to go to, and I've seen it now with Mark Cuban. You could teach a class on cold email pitches. My best part about it, though, was you totally forgot to ask him anything. You just told him what we were doing. Hey, Mark, this is what we're doing at Campus Ink. We've done this with the Illini store. We got this many athletes on, and he just writes an email back. So why are you emailing me?
It was, why are you emailing me to brag?
Yeah.
Any sales professional reading this is like, you forgot the ask. I forgot the ask. I sent the world's best cold email and I forgot the ask.
And that's how you know it was that good, is because he replied back and left the door open for you. That's how you know it was that good.
So to our surprise, Mark answered the email, and we went back and forth. I'm not going to get too much into the details, but he ended up making us an offer. It felt like Shark Tank over email. Yeah. I think that happened in the next 24 hours, Adam, because I was like getting ready to go to Christmas that weekend, and literally like we had Christmas at my wife's family's place, and that was like the bomb I dropped on all of them. Like, hey, I pitched Mark Cuban. He just gave us an offer. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, it happened super quick.
Yeah. And then sure enough, on Monday, we got on with John Simon, who we work with really closely now at Mark's office. And I think they spent the next 3 weeks going through due diligence, making sure our numbers were good and clean. And, I think they called back right after the first of the year and was like, we're like, let's do this. Yeah. We finally closed in March. And that was the most crazy 2 or 3 months of our lives, because you had just had a newborn. We didn't want to count our chickens before they hatch, for sure, right? Yep. And sure enough, it went through, and I was like, Adam, I need you. Quit your job. Come join us. Tell us about that.
So the backside, or the backstory for me was, obviously Geneva was pregnant through most of that time, and I remember having the conversation with her, and this is how I know, she's a great partner. She was like, hey, if this is going to be really cool, do it. I want you to do it. I want you to make it happen. And kind of the caveat was, if Mark is in, you have to. You don't have a choice. And I said, well, that's a pretty dangerous condition to have, because how good Steven is at closing. And so he's probably going to close that. So the beautiful thing was, it happened, and she was super supportive. The challenging was, like you said, I had a 1-month-old. So it made it really easy to answer those late night emails and text messages, because I was up every 2 hours anyway. It was a beautiful thing.
I'm sure everyone just loves the love story. I think you accepted your job offer on Valentine's Day just for some fun.
Yep.
But then it was off to the races. We've now hired a head engineer. Adam has, built out his team with Sean, who handles all our marketing, communications from Maryland, who we'll meet, on the next episode. We now have over 400 athletes who have signed up in the queue. It's crazy. And it's we're recording this at the end of April. So all things considered, we wanted to start, sharing this with our customers and our listeners and those interested in NIL, just so that you could be on the inside of what's going on and what we plan to do. Adam, what are your plans for kind of this podcast and what we're going to be doing?
Yeah. And I think you said it, right? Like, this is so crazy, but so fun. Like, why not invite as many people into what's happening and the excitement and the fun as we can? I think what we want to do in the NIL space, and we talk about this a lot, is, for us at Campus Ink, the t-shirt comes last. We put design and people first. We want to make t-shirts fun. We want to make them exciting. But what that means is you want to do things with people. And so inviting as many people as we can into the conversation here on the podcast as special guests. We're looking forward to having not only movers and shakers in the NIL space as special guests and just hear their perspective, but also invite athletes into into this conversation as well, and get a little bit of insight into how the experience is for them. How is it working with your schools? How is it working with your businesses? And hear a little bit from everybody's perspective as we navigate this new space.
And to be frank, we think we know what we're doing. But truthfully, we're paving that road and writing it every single day. I think you'll hear it best. NIL is the Wild West. It's the Matrix. It's a completely uncharted ground. But I think one of the coolest parts about the community is, it is a pretty small community, and we're here helping each other, whether it's through the different exchanges or the platforms, athletic departments, licensing, you name it. Even the athletes themselves, the agencies, everyone, I feel like is putting athletes first and kind of giving them what they have deserved over this time. I guess, like, Adam, what are your goals in the NIL space? You're obviously a professor and you teach this. You come from, college sports. What are your personal goals for all of this?
I think one of the coolest things about the timing of this is that we actually get to go through it. How many times in your life do you get to be in a position where it feels like an entire industry, collegiate sports, if it were a snow globe, just got shaken up, right? And we can kind of rewrite a little bit of the rules, make sure that things are done in a way that as many people can win as possible. But I think my goals in the NIL space are really to help to do just that, to help as many people win as possible. I think for so long it's been a little bit of an arms race around, basketball and football, and you got to keep the lights on. If those are the two programs that are generating revenue at your university, then you have to live in that space. But if there's an opportunity for other people to win through this new NIL era, I'm really excited to be a part of that. I'm really excited to educate athletes along the way about some different professional development opportunities, learn about contract negotiation, learn about sales analytics, business analytics, digital marketing, have this new opportunity to kind of explore what it means to be a professional athlete while still under the umbrella of their university. It's a really, really cool opportunity to build something brand new in the space.
I think what's cool, like, my passion lies in working with college students. We've got about 150 students across 40 campuses, all learning design and sales. And I've been telling this to people time and time again. Campus Ink works with students. Some of our students just so happen to be athletes. And I think that the coolest part is now when we're on text threads with players and we show them, like, hey, you just sold 100 shirts, you just made $1,000, and just seeing their, like, eyes light up. I don't even see their eyes on the other side of the text message, but just the amount of emotion that they're like, holy cow, can I get one for my mom? Can I get one for my dad? Yeah. And they're just like, this is awesome. T-shirts are fun. Apparel should be fascinating. It's your personal billboard, right? And to be able to share that not only in what we've done at Campus Ink already, but now, like, with more students, it's just all that more fulfilling. And, allowing them to do that, I think is part of it. We say this, that T-shirts come last and they should be fun. They shouldn't, this is not brain surgery by any means.
It's so cool too to, like, we're recording this at the end of April. One of our athletes, Ashley Prangy, who, plays softball at University of Alabama, just
hit
last
one
weekend,
over the scoreboard.
Sports is my life. My dad's an athletic director. I grew up on fields and in gyms more than I did my own house. But it's so cool to have this deeper connection to, like, I would never follow Alabama softball, and it's so rad to have her on the platform, see that happen, and, like, be able to say, hey, this is awesome. Congratulations. That's so cool. See her excitement come back, and then brainstorm, hey, how can we do something cool around this? How can we make this even more special for you? It's really exciting for sure.
Let's dive into, I don't want to, go too far into it, but what are different things that you plan to cover on this podcast? It'll be interesting as the landscape shifts. I talked a little bit about, one thing we definitely want to do is invite the athletes into this conversation. One of the big changes in the NIL legislation is moving that ownership and agency back to the athlete, opening up their voice to their experiences and what they're going through. And we want
this podcast to be no exception to that. We want to invite them into this space. So having athletes on here is something you can expect. Another thing you can expect is hearing from the universities, the administrators, athletic directors as well. That's a whole other voice and perspective that is a part of shaping this new era. So hearing from them what their perspectives are. I'm in a lot of these conversations in my role as a professor, which is really fascinating, having a foot in both camps. The other thing is a lot of businesses, right? So we're in the decorated apparel space, but that's just one avenue of NIL business, right? There's a lot of endorsement deals out there. There's speaking engagements. There's summits that are taking place. There's autograph signings. Collectives are spitting up all over the place. So my goal is to really have this, however many, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, have this be a place where we can hear from all of those voices and start to paint a little bit of a picture holistically of where the NIL era is going, along with building a little bit of a community. We're all in this because we, number one, care about student athletes, hopefully. And number two, we care about collegiate sports. And so let's come together and figure out how we can make that community stronger and better.
And I really appreciate it. I think a goal of ours when we were brainstorming is just transparency. There's tons of exchanges out there. There's platforms, there's different rules and rights and regulations, and there's so many different ways to do it. I think one thing Adam and I talked about is being agnostic to all of them, learning about all of them and figuring out different ways that it's not an or conversation. NIL is an 100%. And conversation. Yeah. And we're excited for that. Maybe we can, if this is good enough, maybe we can get Mark on one of these times. That would be sweet. I don't want to say that. We do. Working with Mark is really cool. We get to talk to him once a week. We email with him back and forth. He forwards us stuff. This podcast was actually one of his ideas, but we get to run things by him because he puts athletes first. You can see him doing it. He's been doing it since he was broadcasting Indiana basketball games. Right.
I'll tell you what, man. As a self-made billionaire, this probably is the sentence that needs to be said the least, but the guy is so stinking smart. Like the amount of knowledge that he drops in like one sentence email replies, I'm like, why didn't I think of that? So
precisely.
It's
precisely.
Amazing.
We'll definitely be bringing on others from our team, whether it's Sean or Neil. We're definitely taking a tech stab at this. There's a big play in NIL merchandise and technology because this is a fragmented industry, and we think that we can probably build something along the way. So we definitely want to go behind the scenes at Campus Ink and talk about what we're doing across the board. But if you are interested in this, shoot us an email. I'd love to have guests on here. But overall, this is fun. Good first episode. Yeah. This is sick.
We'll see. We'll see. Things are constantly changing. So, legislation, it's going to be a fun ride for sure.
Well, again, thanks for listening, everyone. I'm Steven, CEO at Campus Ink. Adam Cook. Hope to have you back on the next episode. But this is the first episode of, I guess, what we call the NIL Show.
The NIL Show.
There you go. Have a good one.
Bye.